What is up, everyone, and welcome to the Thunderdome. Today, we're going to talk about the crypto market, where it's headed, what you can do, and the exact coins. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to tell you any coins, and the exact things that you can do right now to win in what I call. What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Thunderdome. Listen to it again. That was exciting. Anyway, welcome to what I'm now calling the Bear Market Society. We win in the bear, so we don't have to do anything in the bull except for sell our coins and take off in the sunset, drink Mai Tais, and enjoy our lives until the next bear market where we reaccumulate and we win again in the next bull. The purpose of the Bear Market Society is to take over the world in a meaningful and positive way, and of course, produce wealth through crypto. So remember, as always on this broadcast, nothing here is financial advice, but if you're watching with me, just give me a live down below. And if you're watching after the fact, just give me a replay down below so I know who's here and who is not. I'm going to share the link to my private messenger group. If you want to be part of that group, just drop group down below. But outside of that, as soon as I share this, we are going to talk about the market and really what's going on today. Remember, one of the places I'm really active is Twitter. So if you're not following me on Twitter, you probably should go over there and follow me. It's just twitter.com/Chandler SAF. Let me share this. Just twitter.com Chandler SAF. Let's check it out. We'll check out my Twitter feed and see all the cool things that I have going on. But anyway, if you're not following me on there, you should, because I do a lot more like real-time market stuff and just kind of talking about what's going on, why, and all that. So remember, you can come over here to my little picture and you can follow me, Chandler Walker. I'm a goblin. That's my goblin. He's a champion. Chandler SAF, twitter.com/Chandler SAF. And you can see all the cool things that I'm tweeting all the time and really talking about, charts, little screen by screens and play by play, something I'm going to talk about today here. But outside of that, let's look at the total market and see where we're at. So Bitcoin's kind of been ranging. Basically, it's in a range 20,000 to like 21.7, something like that. So it hasn't been super eventful. It's been mostly sideways. ETH had a little bit of a pump, but for the most part, we're just kind of in a range. And so nothing's really moving a ton. Alts have been bouncing quite a bit, which makes people second guess and question whether or not we're at the accumulation phase, the bottom, or what part of the rally are we really in terms of the bear market, because we've seen BNB pop up quite a bit. We've seen XRP. I mean, Solana popped up quite a bit. Polkadot went up quite a bit. We had Tron, the other big ones, AVAX pumped, I think it was $21, Polygon 53, it was up to like 60, Litecoin pumped, all of these kind of started pumping back up. So we had a nice little, and Cosmos has been performing incredibly well, 14%, Polygon 32%, so AVAX 12%, Sheep 35%. When Sheep starts pumping, I know we're about done. But when you look at the overall market, you look at Dogecoin 20%, there's a good indicator of a top. But all of these have had pretty good market sort of rallies. And when you look at the ones that have rallied really well, it gives you kind of an idea of what's going to rally during the full bull market. So Decentraland, a lot of these good narratives, a lot of these good projects really started pumping and moving. So kind of pay attention to that. That doesn't mean that we ape into and FOMO into altcoins, because remember, they fall just as hard or harder than they did when they came up. So they come up, but they fall way harder and way faster. So you kind of want to be careful with that you don't get wrecked trying to jump into altcoins too early. And then you end up buying the bottom and buying the bottom and buying the bottom, and you lose another 80% of value in your dry powder. So for me right now, for the most part, I'm still mostly in DCAing into Bitcoin with a little bit into ETH, and then a tiny bit into alts, but not really. Like when Solana and Polygon, when Polygon was down to like, where was it? Where is Polygon? When Polygon was way down in like the 30-cent zone, I was pretty happy to jump into that. When Solana was down in like the low 30s, that was a good zone. Looking at even Atom, Cosmos, a little bit lower. A lot of these were in a good zone. But when they start rallying hard and having that little like peak off, that's when I'm going to step away and not jump into that, because it comes down just as hard as it does as it comes up. So just be careful in that domain. When we look at DeFi, not really much is going on. DeFi hasn't really moved all that much. Nothing. Last 7 days with the market pumping, we've been getting a little bit of money back in the the ecosystem, but for the most part, still not a ton. I mean, we're 48 billion in ETH, BSC, Tron, AVAX, like kind of the top 10 are still the top 10. One thing I have been talking about a lot is optimism. I think optimism is going to be a really good play in the future. Obviously, in the bear market, nothing's really a good play, but it might be something to pay attention to. So DeFi is just kind of sitting there lingering, waiting for us to get back in the saddle and really pump back up, but not really a lot to report there right now. Like I said, I'll do a separate video on optimism because I think optimism is kind of going, I think we're going to see a DeFi summer with optimism, or a DeFi something pretty soon with optimism, because I've noticed a lot of the really good Phantom developers have moved and positioned themselves in optimism as well. So that's going to be something to pay attention to and look out for. And I think that'll actually give us some really cool stuff to pay attention to. So remember, let's go to the coins and what's really happening. Remember, follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/ChandlerSAF. Go over there, follow me, and then come in the comments and say followed. So I know you followed me on Twitter. But something that I really did find interesting was when we look at this Bitcoin chart, we'll just look at the Coinbase one, is right here in this sort of this correction that we're going through. I think the 4-hour chart's the best one to look at. We did kind of propel past this, but something to look at that I think is really interesting in terms of the 4-hour chart. Take a look at this sort of structure we have here. We have this peak, and then this decline, and then this decline, then this peak again on this line, then this decline. We kind of broke through it and falling through it. So what's interesting to me here is this looks like sort of a running flat correction, which when we look on Twitter, it looks pretty similar to this. So we had we came back up, we hit here, now we're coming back up, we're going to hit a little lower, and then people are going to say, oh, we bottomed out, and they're going to come up, we're going to get a little lower high, and I think we ultimately come down to create either a lower bottom, somewhere around 13 to 16K, or we come just a little bit higher where we were previously. I would probably anticipate maybe a little bit lower between that like 13 and 16 zone. But when you look at that, and then you compare it to this, it does look strikingly similar to what's happening now. So that'll be something to pay attention to if that plays out. From where I'm seeing it, we've had this line here as a sort of a top. So touched, plummeted, came up, touched, plummeted, and then came up, like rode the line for a while, and then ultimately got rejected. So I think what's going to happen now, we've been rejected once. What I think might play out here is we'll come down and we'll touch the 20s again, and we might touch again and then get that massive rejection, which will take us down to probably somewhere either just around 17, but I'm kind of leaning towards it moving us to, let's look at the zones. I'm leaning toward this thing moving us to like the meat down here, like 16.1. I like to look at the meat of the candles from some of the previous cycles, but I think this would be a good zone right here. If I was going to put my money on it, 16.17, and then between like 13.8 and like 16.17, I think would be a good zone for that ultimate bottom. And then when we hit that, like I said in a previous video, what'll happen is we'll just essentially, we'll do that pattern, we'll come down, we'll hit here, we'll wick down here, and we'll just spend an obscene amount of time, and I'll die of boredom as we come back up, and then we'll just stay sideways for, I mean, at least until winter. So that's kind of what I think is going to happen. Some points of confluence that I think play into that are when we look at the weekly chart, we still haven't been able to cross over bullish. We had this attempt right here, which obviously got rejected. We started to peel over here. It's kind of moving sideways, but it's starting to peel back down. So we haven't seen any long-term frame of sort of any long-term like big change or anything like that. So we're still in the danger zone. When we look at the daily, we did hit this bottom and we did finally clear over here, but now we're starting to peel down. We're going to come test this. And if that goes down, then that puts us bearish on the daily again. So that's kind of another point of confluence as to what's happening. Another thing on the 4-hour, when we're looking here, we did have a crossover, which puts us in a sort of bearish trajectory, at least in the near term. But then when we look here, we had sort of a top right here as well. So we had a sort of a touch, and then a rejection. So now we're down here, we're bearish again. So lot of signs pointing to the fact that we haven't really bottomed out yet. So don't get your pants in a bundle. I think we got some more time to get into this market and really hit these bottoms. For me right now, it's honestly, if I can, I mean, I'm DCAing mostly in Bitcoin and then ETH as well, like I've been saying. But when we hit this 20,000 line, it's been a good spot. Then we'll break through that. And then I'll DCA in down here as well, because obviously I know Bitcoin and ETH are going to come back up. ETH is going to be the easiest 10 times play in the history of the world, especially if we end up in this zone. If we end up down to this zone, you're looking at like a $500 to $700 ETH. That would be incredible, like legitimately a life-changing opportunity. So that's kind of where I would be looking at for ETH. And I've been playing the channels here. We already went down to that 900. When we look at the weekly on ETH, I kind of mapped that out based on the meat of some of the previous cycles. So we already hit that 800 zone as a bottom, but I wouldn't be surprised to see like down to, like I said, like this zone, like 500 to like 700-ish. And that's life-changing opportunity right there for me. It's like, let's sell everything, go all in at that point, because we are winning. So that's kind of where I think he's at. When we look at the like altcoins, I think, like I said, they fall just as hard as they came up. So when you're in this bearish sort of turbo drive down, this annihilating pattern, this pattern to where your alts are going into nothingness, to where you keep buying them, and then your alt's down 50%, then it's down 90%, then it's down 95%, then it's down 99%, and you hate your life and your entire being because your investment went to nothing. Remember, they can do that again. So this little pump could also turn into another turbo dump. So just be careful with these things right now. When I mapped out the bottom on Polygon over here, remember, these don't have a bottom. There is no support. Because if Bitcoin plummets, they plummet. These things don't have a mind of their own. This is like a bee colony. You have the queen bee, which is Bitcoin, and all the other little hive minds literally just follow whatever Bitcoin does. And so when people put up resistance and supports and all this stuff for alts, it's just garbage. It doesn't make any sense because they all depend on the movement and price action of Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin plummets, this thing's going to plummet, and they go all the way back down. So you just have to be careful with that and be careful investing in these things, because you could see Polygon pump back down to 20 cents, which for me would be a beautiful buy-in, because I will buy all of it at that point. Same thing with like Solana. We have to remember, we're already down to these points, but this doesn't mean that Solana is done. It doesn't mean it's not going to dump. It means we got a little bit of a pump, but it also means Solana can go all the way down to $11, $12. So these things don't have a mind of their own. They're dependent on Bitcoin to pump and move. So remember, when you're investing in these alts, you can see your investment literally go down 99% and just get completely wrecked. And that's why I think it's important to invest in these when we get into accumulation, which I don't necessarily think we're in. And I may be wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong. And we go into a phase where we have a blow off top or something like that. But I just don't think we're quite at the accumulation zone yet. I would almost venture to say that July 4th weekend will probably have a turbo dump, because we always have huge dumps during holiday weekends. So that might be something to look out for. Then when we look at the Bitcoin alts or the ETH with respect to Bitcoin chart, we bearishly fell out of this. We've had a little pump. I wouldn't be surprised to see this come back down, bounce off down here, and then come back up. So again, I don't think we're in a position to where we're ready to move and where we're ready to moon. I think when we see Bitcoin dominance hit somewhere around 50%, that's when we're going to, like this zone, that's when I think we're going to start seeing like the accumulation phase come in, where it's a good idea to collect on alts. Because what's happening right now, when you look at like Bitcoin dominance, you look at the bull market support band for Bitcoin dominance, but it's touched and kind of set there for several days or several weeks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just testing it. And then it pumped. Now it's dumping, it's testing again. So we could be here for another week or 2 or 3 or 4, who knows, or it could pump again. And what that means is Bitcoin will essentially turbo dump, and then all the alts will turbo dump even more. So then when Bitcoin comes a little bit up, its dominance is going to go way up, because it holds its value a lot stronger than any of the altcoins will. So let me know if there's any questions so far, but that's kind of where I think we're at in the market. I don't think anything's legitimate, like just crushing it or ready to buy in. I'm not putting my net worth into alts or anything like that just yet. I think we have to be careful. When you look at the overall market, when I look at the overall market, the overall market's had a couple of pretty good days. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to maybe come back up and test this 32.3 and then come back down and then finally have a good pump back up. I think we've had a good relief rally. I know the FOMC is coming up, so we're probably going to see some bleed the week before that, and then we'll pump again, which could be something that coincides with Bitcoin turbo dumping on July 4th weekend. So just something to pay attention to and look out for. I don't necessarily think we're in a place to celebrate, but we might be in a place where we could get a nice relief rally. We've already seen a little bit of a relief rally, and we'll see how the game plays by the time we get here, and ultimately see if we get a rejection or an acceptance. But I think it's too early to celebrate and too early to really say, hey, it's time to go back up, put your net worth into everything. And obviously it's not financial advice, but you don't buy on the first rally. That's kind of a good rule that I follow. The first rally sometimes ends up being a sucker's rally and you get wrecked. So you just have to be careful. Same thing with like the dollar. We've had some pretty good dumps. We came all the way back down to turbo pump back up. So now we're trending downward a little bit. So wouldn't be surprised to see the dollar test this line again. And if it falls through, then the dollar comes back down and Bitcoin probably comes back up. If it tests and turbo pumps, then, well, Bitcoin's going to dump and we're probably going to continue sort of this recessionary pathway. Oil, everybody always wants to know about oil. It looks strong. Unfortunately, we could see oil tried to have a big turbo pump here, and it was like pump it up. Let's pay $150 a gallon at the gas stations and tanks and pumps. Let's take over the world with oil. And then it came back down. It's tested this several times. And so it's looking like oil will hold and continue some sort of an upward trajectory. It's actually testing on the weekly right now on the RSI. So we'll see if oil can clear that and actually continue to become bullish. It did have a crossover. So who knows if that can do something. We had the crossover here on the weekly. So that could be an indicator that oil will actually go bearish. That crossover is typically a pretty good indicator. And then right here, if this gets rejected on the RSI and comes back down, then oil will continue to be bearish, which would be good for people who don't want to pay a bunch of money at the pump. When we look at the monthly, we're still in pretty much bullish territory on oil. So nothing to celebrate just yet. But that's kind of where we're at. That's kind of what the market looks like. Let me know if there's any questions. NASDAQ on the monthly, we've just turbo dumped. We're just about to that 200-week moving average. I would anticipate that 200-week. I mean, let's look at the stocks as a whole forever. We've gone under, in 2008, we went under that 200-week moving average. And I do think once real estate turbo dumps, it'll actually help inflation quite a bit, and we'll actually see recovery a lot quicker than we think. But in 2008, we basically just annihilated the 200-week and then came back up again over here. In 2000, during the dot-com bubble, we fell straight through it, and then it took us a while to collectively come back up. And technically what happened was we started to rise back up, but we didn't really get a good rally. So then we recorrected in 08 and then got the turbo rally. So something to look out for. I don't know if we're in a period that's as bad as 08 or the dot-com bubble. So most other corrections historically, or I guess recently, come near the 200-week. Like look at 2020, the COVID correction wicked off of it and came up. So what we could probably see is, I mean, if it gets really bad and inflation just next time it reports higher and it's worse, then we're probably going to turbo dump underneath it and it'll take us several months to climb back out. If not, if it slowly starts to improve, we're probably going to see a wick to, we might see another month that's a wick to that, and then finally a rise back up, maybe a short-term relief rally, which we've already sort of seen in the summer. So that's kind of where I think the market looks and where I think we're headed. Nothing to celebrate just yet. I think we're getting into a better place, but we're not quite in a place to where we're like, let's go, let's buy in. Obviously, for me, if I'm DCAing into both the crypto market and the stock market, and a lot of things that I wanted to get a hold of that are now at massive discounts, because then I know I'm going to come out of it and I'm going to crush it. I know the U.S. economy isn't going to tank, no matter what the Bitcoin maximalists or the fiat haters say. The economy is going to come back up. We're going to be okay, and it's going to be in a good position. So I know for me, getting in at these prices is going to put me in a place to where I create life-changing wealth for when we come back up. And I'm willing to wait and willing to be smart in my entries and smart in my positions as I come into this market where everything's down. I create cash, sit in cash. I've been telling everybody on this channel for months that I've been sitting in stable coins waiting. I mean, since January, I think I've had most things in stable coins, just waiting to be able to get good entries into the crypto market and into the real estate, or not real estate, into the stock market. So that way I have two areas hedged, and I'm looking good for when the correction turns around and when we take over the world. So let me know if there's any questions. Drop those in the chat. If you found this valuable, let me know. Just say valuable down below, and let me know what your number one biggest takeaway is in the comments. And if you like this broadcast, make sure you like it and subscribe to the channel, and then follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/ChandlerSAF. All right, I will talk.